Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching Combat Sports UK.
Good evening, everybody, depending where you are in the world. It's the Combat Sports UK MMA podcast. Taylor Collard has bailed out. Apparently, he's too busy doing other things to bother jumping on and speaking to us. But I am joined by a man who was in attendance at UFC 297. How you doing, John?
Really, really good. Great event on my end, just because the crowd atmosphere and stuff like that. I know people are crapping on 297. Obviously, wasn't the best fights, but still a great time. Met Poatan, met Edmund Shabazian, and a bunch of other fighters. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I stayed up. Well, I say I stayed up. That's a lie. I went to bed. I woke up for the main card. So it was 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. The main card kicked off. So it would have been an all-night thing to watch the card. And to be honest, I didn't really feel I had the energy in the tank for that. I've been doing quite a bit of covering live events lately through the night. So it was time to just take a bit of a pause for the cause. But we'll jump straight into the main event, mate. Obviously, Sean Strickland, Dricuss Du Plessis. And, you know, we'll have a run through the card and everything that was on there. You're going to be keeping me in check today because Lewis has advised that there's going to be some sponsors coming along and basically wants me to not do what I normally do and swear from the start of this episode to the end of this episode. So you start with the main event, mate, and I'll just sit quietly.
Okay, so in the main event, okay. Main event. So I found it was pretty entertaining. It was, it wasn't one of the best fights of all time. Like, it won't be in our top 15, top 20 of fights of the year. But yeah, Dricuss won the middleweight championship from split decision. I don't know how you scored it personally, live watching it, and I didn't rewatch it yet on the broadcast. I had a Strickland 3-2 rounds. I think he won round 1, 2, and 5, or 4 and 5. Entertaining fight. Dricuss, he was always reaching. I feel he was kind of stumbling, trying to go for a punch or anything. And so it looked like he had big movements, but nothing landed on Sean. Sean fought like Sean did. High guard, did the Mayweather stance, and kept rolling with the punches. His jabs was on point because you saw Dricuss after the fight looked way more messed up than Strickland, other than that cut from that alleged headbutt. Good fun fight overall. Both men kept it standing till Dricuss launched a few times for his takedowns, and happy for Dricuss. Honestly, the crowd reacted at the end of round 5 when it felt like he was winning. We saw a lot of South African fans there. It's just interesting to see what's next. If Dricuss will fight Sean again, Izzy, Hamzat, so not sure. But entertaining fight and new. Can't complain. It was a pretty close fight. You have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, look, it's as for the main event, I went the opposite way. I thought Dricuss just did enough to win it. I thought it was very close. I don't think there's any claims of robbery. Had it gone to Strickland, I wouldn't have particularly had any real major issues with it. I'm going to be honest, mate. I think there was quite a inflood of people talking about what a war it was, and Sean Strickland was talking about how I'd bleed for you guys and everything else. And I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think it was that much of a war. I think it was more a case of the fight before it that preceded it. And
yes,
a couple of others on there, it was a standout fight in comparison. So I just think it was... I actually thought Sean Strickland looked extremely composed when he came out. He looked focused, he looked lasered in, he looked, completely on his game. Maybe too much so, because, Sean's normally... He does like to have a bit of fun, and he was almost too switched on, but I think he knew the threat that Dricuss possessed. I think he was maybe a little cautious. He was popping out that jab. That jab was a massive part of the fight.
On point.
Couldn't miss. And Sean's always kind of thrown that jab out a little bit, but I actually thought he was putting a bit more into it. It looked like he was throwing it with intent. It wasn't kind of a rangefinder. It was more of a, stick it in your face and make you contemplate whether you want to come forward or not. I thought he looked great. I thought he looked really composed. I just felt like as the rounds went on and as the fight went on, I think Dricuss, his main problem is that he looks extremely sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
It looks, I mean, Ian Gary's obviously, he was making his comments about how it looked like two amateurs fighting and he hopes he never has a fight like that. And I kind of get what he's saying because Sean Strickland's jab was very good. The defensive shell that he had was good, like it always kind of is. Dricuss, on the other hand, was just so erratic. He's so, it makes you struggle to comprehend maybe how he landed that killer body shot on Bobby Knuckles because he was just a different man in there. He throws everything at you, doesn't take a step back, doesn't take a minute, relentless pressure, obviously throws heavy bombs, loading up on everything. And I just, from a skill point of view, it was a relatively poor fight on Dricuss's end. What I would say for the reason for me scoring it in his favour was that although it looked sloppy and it looked reckless and it looked a little bit out of control, a lot of those shots were landing. And in my opinion, those bigger shots that landed from Dricuss outdid some of the, what I'd like to call them, point scoring shots that Sean was landing, which was kind of, in the amateur game in boxing, you get a point for landing. It doesn't matter how hard it is, as long as it lands clean. And I think that was kind of what we saw here to an element. He was throwing nice shots. I thought he caught Dricuss with some real nice shots. And I think if you look at apart from the cut that Sean got, if you looked at the two faces, you would imagine that Sean Strickland was the heavier puncher. And even, Dricuss kind of mentioned that, didn't he? So it was a close fight. I would have had no issues if Sean had won. I had no issues if Dricuss had won. It was okay, but we've kind of alluded to the fact that I said in the predictions pod that Sean Strickland would be the first champion to lose his belt because he was fighting first for starters. But I just, I favoured Dricuss going into this. I don't think Sean's the very best. I don't think Dricuss is the very best.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was two solid, but not top of the food chain guys fighting for the title.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, yeah, like I said, you said it wasn't the best fight of all time. It was more like two men who are not probably top of the division of like the champ or 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. If you look at Bobby Knuckles and Izzy, and maybe Hamzat coming up there as well. You did see, Sean with his jabs had more purpose on it. He did more damage. He did land 1 or 2 big shots, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. But when Dricuss threw, when it did land, it was bigger shots compared to the jabs. Obviously, it was as a looping rights and lefts, but very sloppy. Dricuss fight sloppy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some kicks did land. Some kicks were blocked by Sean, but it looked like he was throwing it from like far off, and he was just hoping for a Hail Mary to land.
Yeah.
He seemed was blitzing. I couldn't see if his mouth was open like in his previous fights. Because I know he got his nose fixed and he could breathe from there, but like it just looked like Dricuss was chasing Sean the whole time.
Yeah.
It seems like none of us are mad about the decision, and if it went either way, would have been fine. The reason I scored it like that, I do know at the end of the first round, like Dricuss got that takedown, like he launched himself to get the takedown, but Sean stood up right away. So I don't know how the judges saw that. I saw some judges might have scored for round 1 for Dricuss. It's because of that takedown. I wouldn't agree with it. He got a desperate takedown. Was less than a minute left in the round. I think it's just score points, but I don't think if you land a takedown, you don't score any damages or have control over it. It shouldn't count as a shouldn't count in your points.
No, I mean the fact of the matter is it's a change of position, isn't it? It's you shoot the takedown, yes, on the visual, it looks fantastic. It looks like you're the dominant fighter. There's an element of this that we'll talk about in the Arnold Allen fight as well. Because there's obviously the same sort of conversation to be had around that. Like you said, yes, Dricuss shot, secured the takedown pretty well, even got Sean to the mat, but Sean
Stood
got
right up.
straight back up,
Straight
and
back up.
Dricuss
Yeah.
had done no damage. It's no different than circling around the octagon and putting somebody on the back foot.
It didn't
You know,
help him in the fight at all. Like,
no, no.
Mhm.
It just from that visual, I mean, it always throws me back to the Brendan Loughnane thing. I don't know if you're too aware of Brendan, but he fights out the UK in the PFL, and he was on the Dana White Contender Series, and when he was looking to come through on there, he grabbed a takedown in the last minute of the last round that he in a fight that he was winning convincingly. And it was just him securing it, basically securing the win. And Dana basically said he don't want fighters that do that because he should have gone and tried to get the finish, and it was the stupidest thing that he's ever done. Because Brennan's a phenomenal fighter, but it's the same kind of thing here. You know, takedowns are a change of position. If Sean Strickland is on the back foot and Dricuss is chasing him down and backing him up against the cage, that's a prominent position for Dricuss Du Plessis, but you don't score that. There's an element of ring generalship and stuff like that, but just a takedown that's instantly the guy gets back to his feet. I don't see any real basis in it. Yes, as a mixed martial artist, it's great, but you've not really accomplished anything.
and
You know,
he did it a few times throughout the fight. So I don't know how
I
the
didn't really
judges
give
would
too
see it.
much to it, John. I'll be honest. Even in my scoring of it, there was a lot of those rounds where I felt Sean Strickland outlanded Dricuss, and I think if you look at the shot stats, that's quite there.
Yes.
It's quite clear. It's there. You can see it. But I felt there was maybe 2 or 3 heavy shots that Dricuss would have landed in that round that were the more prominent factors of the fight or of that particular round, and that's what led me to scoring to Dricuss. But the takedowns weren't really a factor for me because again, unless you do something with it, doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
I suppose before we move on to the next fight, mate, there's a lot of talk around what's next. I know they've come out had a little bit of beef, these two again. Maybe Sean's trying to stir up the one. He's obviously been on social media and he said he thought he won, and then he's seen a lot of people saying the same thing. But it's probably not going to be Strickland and Du Plessis next. I don't think it should be. You know, it's not. It wasn't a highly
No.
controversial result. I think most can admit that it was a close fight, whether you thought it should have gone one way or the other. But this isn't boxing. You don't just get an immediate rematch. You've got to earn it. Immediate rematches should be there for long dominating champions, people like Alexander Volkanovski, for example. Should he lose to Ilia Topuria, you know, off the back of 6 defenses or something like that now,
Yep,
5
6,
defenses.
Yeah.
It's you know, he deserves a chance to get that one back. Outside of that, those kind of situations shouldn't happen. One thing I'll go on a rant on, and this is probably where I'll try to not swear because this does boil me a little bit. I've seen obviously the conversations about Dricuss and Alex Pereira. Now, some people were saying that Alex is on about coming back down to middleweight. I don't think we'll see him do that. I'm sure he could make it, but I don't see why he would. He's the bigger draw. He's the bigger name. It makes more sense for him to pull people's like Dricuss up to light heavy if they want a shot at his crown. But I'm getting a little bit fed up, mate, of UFC champions that win the belt and then are instantly talking about other weight classes. Now, people kind of don't think about this, and obviously Conor kind of started this off by doing what he did. You know, the defenses aren't there. You've got the Jose Aldo, you've got the Eddie Alvarez, but you're looking at you look at Izzy jumping up against Jan after basically clearing out the division. Fine, no issues with it. You look at Kamaru Usman, who could have come up had Izzy not been champion and done it in his reign. Fine. You look at GSP, you know, people like that. These guys were dominant in their division and they aimed to be a 2-weight world champion after they'd cleaned up. Now, there's too many champions. You see Islam doing it. He's got a couple of defenses against a featherweight in Volk. He's got one win over Oliveira for the title, but he hasn't fought a lightweight, and we've seen him calling out Leon Edwards. You know, we're seeing it's just happening far too much for me. Where you even got like Ilia Topuria now was going up against Volkanovski, talking about Sean O'Malley and vice versa. And it's just like, if Ilia Topuria beats Alexander Volkanovski, A, there's going to be a rematch, and B, if you don't, you're probably going to have to face Max. You don't just get that standout, I'm going to be double champ. It's becoming too easy. When Conor did it, it was a one-off, riding the wave. The momentum was there. I can understand why it was done. But it's happening too frequently now. Like, I'm a massive Leon Edwards fan. But Leon Edwards doesn't deserve a shot at being a two-weight world champion yet. And I've seen Leon talking about going up and potentially challenging. And, like, no. You beat the guy, you won the belt, you defended it again, fine. But for me, 3 defenses at a minimum.
Agreed.
3 defenses. You win the belt, you defend 3 times, then you're able to seek the double champ status. It's like the Daniel Cormier thing as well. He moved up to heavyweight, obviously got that one against Stipe, but with Cormier, Cormier as a light heavyweight, okay, there's kind of an exception because you look at John Jones, but outside of John Jones, DC was the man.
Yep.
At light heavy, so I kind of understand the intent in going and doing it, and I think it's great these guys are trying to secure legacy and big fights and whatnot, but I'm a bit fed up of it now, I'll be honest. I don't mind seeing champs, but they have to be, like I said, the Kamaru Usman and Israel Adesanya, for example. You've got a dominant welterweight champion, you've got a dominant middleweight champion. If they were, other than the fact that the African brothers and whatever else and don't want to fight, that would have been the perfect opportunity to make a double champ. And we're just seeing it too much.
Yeah. As much as we don't agree on some stuff, I do agree with you on this. I want to see the division being cleaned out first, at least beat some top 5 guys ranked in your division. So like the reason we're all cool with Izzy moving up, it's like, okay, he beat Bobby Knuckles, he beat Costa, he beat Romero, and they're all in the top 5, and you're like, wow, who's next? And then Cannonier at the time didn't have a good win streak. Vittori was like in and out. So
yeah,
you need to look at the champion and be like, who's next for him? You can't find a clear path. Moving up then would be a good choice.
Yeah.
Leon Edwards, you still have so many challengers in the welterweight division. You have Bilal you have to defend, and Shafkat. What happens with Gary? What happens with Sean Brady was, top 7, he's gonna fight Luque.
Yeah.
Lightweight, Makachev has a role of fighters, Gaethje, Jaruki and Oliveira, and who knows if Holloway wins, what happens with the BMF. So you gotta clean out the division first. In terms of what we started with, who's next for Dricuss? I think one of your predictions for UFC 300 card might be correct. I think a little bit of money for Izzy to come back at UFC 300, and that'll be the main event. I could definitely see Izzy coming back fighting Dricuss. I think that's a logical matchup. He lost to Sean. Sean lost the belt. I can't top of my mind who's the clear next challenger in the middleweight division. Nobody really. Costa needs to fight. Whitaker needs a win. He's fighting Costa. Shumayev didn't impress me versus Usman, who's a welterweight. Yeah. So they're talking about a rematch. I don't see a rematch. Maybe down the line. You'll have, if Izzy does come back and wins, you have this 3-headed competition between Sean Dricuss and Izzy with the MMA math. Like, Sean beats Izzy, see what happens with Izzy Dricuss. Pereira coming down, I don't see it happening. You cut too much weight. You need at least 4 months to get that training camp going and come back down. It's too much for you, I feel. And you haven't defended light heavyweight yet. There's a clear challenger in Jamal Hill. There's Ankalaev who won, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago now. Yeah. So you have your death row to defend. So I believe the next logical step for Dricuss will be Izzy. Yeah. Hopefully UFC 300, because that'll be an amazing. top off the card amazingly. If
Yeah.
not, somewhere around after UFC 300 would make sense.
Do you know what? It's surprising as well because, like you said, there's not a people complaining about the concept of Izzy coming back in off a defeat and being able to just challenge for the title again. But I think the difference with Izzy is A, he's a superstar.
Yep.
He is massively popular. He's charismatic. But on top of that, the biggest one out of them all is what you've just said there. There isn't a number one contender that's standing there putting their hand up. You know, we've just watched Sean Strickland and Dricuss Du Plessis, with all due respect, challenge for the title, the world title. Are you telling me those two guys are the best middleweights on the planet? I'm sorry, like it's like you said, on different nights, I think Robert Whittaker beats both those guys.
Yep.
You know, I think you talk about Hamzat, you're absolutely right. Hamzat, with all due respect again, has done absolutely nothing at middleweight to warrant a title shot. But outside of that, you're looking at your Paulo Costas. You look at, I mean, Paulo Costa, I think Paulo Costa beats both these guys.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree with you.
I just do. I don't think Paulo Costa's that good, but I think he beats both those guys.
But he needs to fight too.
He does.
Costa hasn't fought since
No.
Rockhold, and Rockhold's retired. So,
but like I said, a win over Bobby Knuckles next time out, and Costa's right in the mix.
Exactly. Yep.
You know, can't see it, but still, maybe Robert's just coming to that stage of the career now where these fights are getting a bit closer. But there's no standout matchup there. So for me, Izzy is the logical one, and I think watching this fight and how it unfolded and the level of skill that was in it, again, with all due respect, I think people need to admire Israel Adesanya just a little bit more because, yes, he had an off night against Sean, but you're talking about the guy, one of the most active champions in the UFC. You know, probably in MMA as a whole, one of the most active champions that there is, along with Volt.
Yeah,
you know,
he was close to beating Silva's record, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or title defense in the middleweight or winning streak.
Fell one short, yeah.
So did Usman did in welterweight. So Izzy, I think, is a clear logical challenger. And you mentioned earlier there is a rivalry already there. How when Dricuss won versus Whittaker, Izzy came in the octagon. They talked a lot of crap to each other. Izzy posted on Twitter how they were training years ago. They're both from Africa, so it makes sense. This makes most logical sense. Izzy loses. We know what's happening. Dricuss is the new champ. He defended his belt. Keep going on. We have matchup set up for him. Izzy wins, regain his title for a third time, which is not nobody's done it twice in the middleweight division. Doing three times would be even better. And then see what happens because there could be new challenges for him. You could have a Strickland rematch for Izzy. You could have a rematch for Dricuss depending on the fight goes. Costa Whittaker rematch for both of them. See, Izzy's fought everybody because everybody he's gonna go with is a rematch. The only chance he has in having a rematch is if Brendan Allen wins his main event versus Vittori.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. And I suppose the reason we've spent so long talking about this fight, mate, is because neither of us really are in a rush to get to the next one. So, co-main event, Raquel Pennington is the new women's bantamweight champion. Want to start off myself and say this. Delighted for her. I'm absolutely delighted for Raquel Pennington. You know, she's had a long career. It's not all been, the smoothest. She's on a 6-fight win streak or something now she's on with that one.
Yep.
She started as the underdog. She cost me 10 quid because I'm out of the last man standing now, which was I was going to go with Dricuss and I changed my mind at the last minute. So kicking myself for that one. But
I saw you and Taylor pick the wrong guy.
But I don't have too much to say about Raquel Pennington. And the reason I don't have too much to say about her is because my expectations were low. Now, that's not meant in a disrespectful way, but I just feel like from Amanda Nunes to come to this kind of level, there's a massive drop. But she did what she does best. You know, she kind of just went out. She just kind of ground it out a little bit, really. There was not too much skill-wise. There was moments there where she was lighting Silva up on the feet. But my biggest talk for this is two other women. Number one is Mayra Bueno Silva. The second one, who I'll come on to a little later on, has been chirping in the background, as we all knew she would. But Mayra Bueno Silva will never be a champion. Never. Even in a weight class as weak as this. And the reason I say that is because she has, with all due respect again, because I'm not a fighter, she has a quitter's mentality. She was in that fight. She was trying to lock up submissions. She was gassed massively. She was absolutely blowing out of her, I can't say, right? And to see her laid there in a championship fight on her back with her hands behind her head, knowing that she's about to lose her opportunity at the world title, get up and get knocked out. If you really want it that badly, you know, when we talk from a skill level, right? We talk a lot about Michael Bisping on here because we're obviously from the UK, predominantly based. You don't see Bisping do that. You wouldn't see so many other champions do it because they're built differently. You know, they'd rather go out than tap some of these guys. They'd rather get knocked out than lose on points. If it meant there was a 50-50 chance that they'd win the fight. You know, we saw, for example, the Korean Zombie just jumps to mind against Max. Yeah. Losing that fight and went, oh, do you know what? I need to do something here, otherwise it's all over, and ended up getting knocked out. But the respect he gained for that was just typical of the Korean Zombie, because we all looked and we said, do you know what? Fair play, man. You were losing the fight. You threw everything at it. You got chinned. So what? Yeah. That's a big part of the reason why everyone loves you and why you're a legend of the game, right? Mayra Bueno Silva quit. And she quit really, really early. You know, it wasn't in the 5th round. I'm talking 2, 3. That switched off. She just went, I can't do this. I can't win this. She stopped trying. She stopped trying to fight. And I get it. You're that exhausted that you can't fight. You can't continue to fight. But that's what makes fighters different to you and me sat here. Because fighters have something different in them that regular people don't have. Yep. They have that steely determination and grit and heart and just something psychologically wrong with them that makes them say, you know, I'm going to go for it. It doesn't matter if I get knocked out. It doesn't matter if I get hurt. It doesn't matter if I get chinned or choked out or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter if I get... I mean, look at Jamahal Hill getting his arm snapped against Paul Craig. You know, you look at those moments there, and it's just... That's just fighters, man. That's what we know them as. And Mayra Bueno Silva showed me that she will never be a champion because she doesn't have what is required to be a champion in this game.
Yeah, the reason she got this title shot in the first place is she moved up and she got 3 finishes by submissions. And I believe they're all in the first rounds.
Yeah, and one being Holly Holm didn't hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Winning versus Holly Holm, you know, Dana has such a high stool for Holly Holm. So if you beat her, it's pretty straight to the title shot, it seems. But yeah, she got the win off that. But I would say it was also partially because of Raquel. So Raquel, we'll talk about her knowledge and her coaches later, but I think Raquel did everything she had to do to win that fight. Her striking looked crisp. Yeah, from where I was sitting, she looked good. It looked like Maya had no answer to her striking, and the only way you'd see Maya win, it was gonna go bring it to the ground and through a submission. Yeah, and which Maya did a few times, but no dice every time. I think we all see it coming. So Raquel looked very dominant on the feet to me. Yeah. The only problem is Raquel kept clinching her up and trying to take her down. I don't know if it's like what like Leon did to Colby just to prove a point. You could take you down, but like Maya's not a All-American D1 wrestler, you know. So no. You were winning off the feet convincingly. You could have had a 10-9 rounds for 5 rounds if you just kept striking with her, which Maya had no defense to it, couldn't strike back. So happy for Raquel. She did what she had to do, although next time maybe listen to her coaches more often. Yeah. Because I didn't like the
constantly saying break.
Yeah, we couldn't hear it, but we were starting boo. We were
Mm,
booing every time in the crowd.
yeah,
So I don't know if the lack of IQ fights. If you're in the UFC for 10 years, you should know like who to strike with,
yeah,
who you were winning on the feet. I don't believe if you're winning on the feet, you should take someone down and do a ground and pound. I know you're good. She's good at ground and pounding, but you're winning on the feet. Your striking is on point. Maya has no answer, and you know her only way a path of victory for Maya is through submission. So you're giving her a chance to win. She did lock up a few I think an anaconda or
hmm,
a guillotine choke. If
yeah,
a few more seconds, if like you weren't sweaty,
hmm,
Raquel would have lost that belt there. So um lack of IQ, I feel. Just listen more to your coaches. You have your coaches for a reason. You trust them.
yeah.
So
I
you
mean, there
went
was a
through the
lack
whole thing.
of there was a lack of awareness almost, and there was a couple of occasions where I actually thought that the better chances that were there for the submission was when Silva was already gone. She just
Yeah.
didn't have the energy to sink it in, and she just squeeze and grip, and she had a couple of face cranks that she was really really pulling on, and I'm thinking, why? You're obviously exhausted and desperate, but you're face cranking. She ain't gonna tap to that. You
Yeah.
know, you're just wasting your own energy when you're already exhausted. But it's difficult because yes, the team. I think the difference is it's about what kind of statement you want to make. And Raquel Pennington took the safest route. She realized she wore Myra Bueno Silva down. She realized she was exhausted, and she was in no real threat from that point on. I think the only problem with it is that I think you're right. I think if she breaks and she keeps it on the feet a little bit more, I think she gets a knockout. I really do because I
Yep.
think she was whenever they had those exchanges in the middle of the octagon, she was lighting Silver up. But look, she's the champion. Quickly before we jump onto a break, we do need to talk about the elephant in the room, and that elephant is Juliana Pena. She's next in line for the shot. She's talking a lot of rubbish. This is so hard for me, right? But she's talking a lot of rubbish.
Where's that
She's
tape? Where's that tape?
yeah, she's but she comfortably beats either of those girls
I believe so.
comfortably, and I think the sooner we can get someone like Irene Aldana back to a title shot, because we need somebody to step up. I mean, there was a lot of talk. You look at Valentina Shevchenko and people like that. I mean, if Valentina loses to Alexa Grasso, she could walk up and snatch that title off any of the
Yeah.
girls in that division. She really could. So it just needs something like that. I know we've seen obviously Amanda Nunes talking about you never know. Made me when I was listening to her saying that, I'm thinking, are they going to book Nunes Shevchenko for UFC 300? Could that be a shock fight that we're not expecting?
The super fight Dana was talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, it was. I mean, Juliana Pena is going to come back. She'll beat Raquel Pennington. She'll take that title, and then we just need somebody else to step up and take it from her because she will be. I won't be able to put anything on that's got her face on if she's holding the belt because she's bad enough now. She already feels like she's the uncrowned champion and then Amanda Nunes ran off after absolutely smashing her to bits. So we'll see. We'll see. If Pena gets the belt, maybe Nunes will come back and just take it off her just for the crack. But it's this is the thing. We've got these active champions. We've got Volkanovski, and you've got people talking about how he's maybe coming to the end of his reign now, and this could be him over. And you look at Izzy and people jumping all over him and whatever. We've got to appreciate these people whilst they're here, man, because the next batch that come through just might not be able to cut it at that level. Because I'm watching this fight and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, bring back Amanda Nunes. You could put her in there now and she'd beat the brakes off both of these at the same time. You know, it's just it's hard. It's hard the very best leave.
So here's what I'll say about Pena. At least she's making the division interesting.
Yeah. You'll tune in
So
to watch her, whether you want to see her get her face punched in or whether you want to see her win.
yeah, she's talking a lot of crap everywhere, and you're like, wow, you're definitely gonna beat. You're definitely
Yeah.
not gonna beat Amanda, especially beating. But she's making it interesting. You feel like, well, let's throw in there and see how she does.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the biggest women's fight in the bantam division you can do? other than Shevchenko and Nunes, is Nunes and Pena.
Yeah.
They're 1-1 technically. Nunes was in attendance. She was all here. She was here during all fight week.
Mm-hmm.
So if Nunes is not, she seems unfit and like she's ready to come back. So if Pena does get the next title shot, we could see Nunes coming back, and I feel that would be the biggest fight we could do.
Yeah, I completely agree. So next fight on the card, mate. Let's talk about how victorious the Canadian men were on this card. Massive prospect in Mike Malott, gathering a lot of steam. Canadian fans definitely behind him. Thoughts?
It was tough to see him lose 16 seconds left because he was 16 seconds away from a decision win. He was our prospect, right, from Canada. He was our next, not GSP, but like
No.
next big prospect.
Yeah.
Coming out of our country, because there seems like everybody else has one. You know, Brazil has so many, the UK and Ireland, Gary and Edwards, and so many root for. He had a big pop in the arena. He was coming out. We all screaming.
We got it through the TV as well.
Oh yeah. We were screaming Mikey the whole week in his press conference outside his hotel for him to come out. The weigh-ins, he definitely had the largest pop right behind, actually right in front of Strickland for all week. So, he was 10-1-1 going to the fight. He was wanting to crack the rankings, and nobody finishes Magny. I can't remember the last time somebody finished Magny other than Shavkat, but Shavkat finishes everybody. So it was tough to see him 16 seconds. He got in a vulnerable position against Magny. All credit to Magny though. Found a way to come back and win it. So it was definitely tough to see Maya lose. He had a dominant first round, dominant second round. He utilized his wrestling and jiu-jitsu well. He brought Magny down with ease, and Magny had a struggle to going up, as we're talking about with Strickland and Du Plessis. Mayo's takedowns were significant. It was a change of position, but then was dominant position. Was holding him down, going for submissions, going for ground and pound. And we're all yelling for the ref not to stop it with 16 seconds left. So disappointing, because we didn't have a good, other than the women Canadians, we had a terrible night for Canadians in the octagon.
Yeah, I mean,
it could be. I was just gonna say it could be the pressure.
Yeah.
Fighting in your hometown for the first time, you're becoming this big star, because he fought in Vancouver, but he's from Toronto. He grew up in Toronto. He grew up in going to this arena.
Yeah.
Everybody screaming your name at the walkout. I don't know how much of adrenaline he must have wasted. Not wasted, but used in round 1 or 2. And then third round, minute left, he just didn't have the energy to stop Magny's attacks.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what comes next for him, and what this kind of does to him trajectory wise and career wise, because we were talking in the preview show. Taylor picked Mike Malott to get this done on the pod and off the pod. Myself and Lewis, we both basically said that we fancied Neil Magny to get this done, and it was just purely based on the fact that we'd not seen Mike Malott at this level. It wasn't a case of he'd done anything wrong in his performances. He's obviously a talented kid, but it was just, we were talking about Neil Magny and saying, if you look at his record, only the best guys have beaten. You look at his record over his last 10 fights or something like that, the only guys to beat him are Shavkat, Gilbert Burns, and Ian Gary. You got 2 of the biggest prospects there, and Gilbert Burns is an absolute killer. So it was one of those where we were kind of looking, thinking, I just don't know if he's quite ready for this one. But really, if he's going to be, one of these guys, then he should make light work of Neil Magny, and mainly he did. Like I say, it was a dominant display. I was giving him every single round, and then out of nowhere, he just gassed majorly.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I don't think any human being can honestly say, hand on heart, that if they were fighting in front of their home fans in their hometown, with everybody screaming your name, and you being kind of the big Canadian name on the card, if you like. There was obviously plenty of Canadians on there, but this was the guy, and like you said, everyone screaming his name, the support he's had, the poppies bit he was getting, and everything else. Even if he didn't necessarily show it by running around, pumping, playing to the crowd, doing whatever, mentally in here, it will have just affected him a little bit. And it's something that, Tom Aspinall, when he was talking about, the first headliner in the UK, he was saying, I don't really know how I'm going to feel till I get in there. I know what I need to do, but doing it is something completely different. I need to switch all that off, and I think he embraced it. I thought he was quite composed. I don't think he didn't do a lot wrong, mate. That's the hard bit if you're a fan, and, a fellow countryman like yourself. It's hard to see it because he did everything right until he didn't. And it wasn't even a technical thing that he got wrong particularly. He just ran out of steam, and he's definitely got potential. He just
Yeah.
needs to not let this set him back too much, work on that, work on the stamina and just come back. I thought one thing from a tactical standpoint that he maybe did wrong was he just stopped kicking or he wasn't kicking enough.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Neil Magny has shown that he can't check leg kicks and he can't handle leg kicks. I mean, there was a couple of those in the first round, I think it was. He landed the kicks, and I thought, oh my God. I actually put a tweet out saying if Mike Malott wins this by leg kicks and Neil Magny being unable to continue, does Ian Gary move to 14-0? Because, Ian Gary kicked the living daylights out of Neil Magny and just gave him an absolute beatdown. And I think that's maybe something for Mike Malott. Number one, he's got to just trust that cardio a little bit. He's got to put the work in because obviously he has gassed. There is an element of the hometown thing, but also Ian Gary beat the living daylights out of Neil Magny and didn't look gassed whatsoever. People were saying, why is he not going for the finish? Because he's obviously got him beat, but I think he just enjoyed putting an absolute beat down on Magny. Whereas for Malott, although from a points decision standpoint, he was winning quite comfortably, but probably needs to just go through the gears a little bit if he wants to, propel himself to the next level.
It could have been. You think it was one fight too soon for him to fight for the rankings?
No,
you
not
think
really.
it was perfect?
I mean, look, I think there's no. This is the thing is, I came into the MMA world off the back of boxing, and in boxing, all I see is padded records get built up. When someone gets found out, there's no harm in Mike Malott stepping up and falling short on this occasion because he'll learn more from losing that fight to Neil Magny than he would have by beating somebody outside the top 15. So if we're talking about his career moving forwards, this was absolutely right for him. He went out, he showed he's good enough to beat Neil Magny, but he's got some things to work on. So for me, it was the perfect fight at the perfect time, and that doesn't change just because he lost. It's not about staying undefeated in this game. It's about being the best, and this will help him become a much better fighter.
So I was thinking about that a lot after the fight, because we saw him 3 times in the UFC or twice, and no big names he fought. No. He did get finishes, right? He's either 100% finishing rate and all of his wins or 90% if I'm mistaken. Yeah. So I was going back and forth if he deserved a ranking or not. But in the day, I think he did, and I think it was Dana's way of propelling him into stardom because you're fighting in Toronto, Canada, your hometown, versus a guy who is a veteran that everybody knows. And yeah. What were you saying?
I was just sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, I think there's an element of the Canada thing. You're fighting in Canada. You want a big Canada star. You want him to be fighting a good name. So that's what they gave him. But I also think it shows how the UFC rank Mike Malott and what they think of him from a skill perspective. Because whether it was too soon or not is kind of irrelevant. The UFC didn't think it was too soon to put him in there. They don't want, with all due respect to Neil Magny, their older, slightly more washed fighters beating the young up-and-comers because they're all going to retire and leave the sport. They want the new guys to be the ones that rise to the top. So they gave him this fight with the intention of it being a tricky matchup, but it could be the making of you. And it just wasn't meant to be on this night. It just...
16 seconds away. Yeah.
Stuff happens.
Yeah, I just want to bring up your point about the leg kicks again. I completely forgot he did through some nice leg kicks in the first 2 rounds, and the crowd every time had a pop on it. So
Mhm.
I couldn't tell if it was actually the leg kick, if he did check it or not, if we're just overreacting in the
Yeah.
crowd.
Oh no, Magny was in bits. Every
Yeah,
one of them hurt him. Every single one hurt him, and that's why I couldn't understand it because I was just
the
thinking,
waste stuff.
just keep kicking him.
So maybe Ian Gary did show a path to win versus
Hmm.
um Neil Magny. So it it just disappointing at the end of the day, just
Yeah.
disappointing. Good for Magny getting the win, continue his record of wins in the welterweight division.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting to see what comes next for Mayo, since he
Mhm.
almost got the 14th rank, and if, like you said, if UC sees he's where he's ranked, if he was about to be in the rankings. So let's see
Mhm.
what's his next fight will bring him, and
I,
how
I
he
I don't
how
think
he.
he'll drop too much, John.
No, me
I
neither.
honestly don't. I think he might even get a ranked fighter next because
Even
he was
back to
beating
back.
Neil Magny. You know, we've seen it before. Sometimes you get your stock rises even in defeat, and he
Yeah,
was. I mean, to be fair, that referee gave him all the chance in the world because
yeah,
it
yeah.
was probably a little harder in the arena to tell, but on TV it was definitely a late stoppage. You know, you could tell that Mike was just gone. So he was gone. He was getting constantly punched in the head, and I'm thinking, come on, referee. I know you're trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here because he's won this fight if it goes the distance, but he's just not got anything in him to fight, and he's in a horrible position.
Crowd
So
might have influenced as well, because we are just
yeah,
all screaming,
definitely did.
"No, no, stop it!"
Definitely did, and it's not just Canada Canadian fighters that we do see that occasionally from referees and whatnot. But I mean, we talked about the Canada men and how much of a bad night they had. So we're moving to the next fight. What was the thoughts on this? Because there was a lot of talk before this fight about how this might be, a contender for being one of the fights of the night. You got just because the style of Chris Curtis, Mark Andre, you know the stand and bang kind of
Mhm.
style that they have. So, what were your thoughts on the fight and how it played out in comparison to what you maybe expected it to be?
Um, as the theme of this card goes, disappointing.
Yeah, yeah,
So I had, like, Barrio. He's not an amazing fighter, right?
no,
He's not. He's a good fighter. He's not a rank top 15 fighter in the UFC. Let's say. I think, if, as much as we just talk about Mayo, did he deserve to fight in the rankings? I think Barrio, we threw him on because they needed a Canadian on the main event,
yeah,
because or else we would have only had Mayo, and everybody else would be in the undercard.
mm-hmm,
So I expected both men to stand and bang. Curtis trains with Sean,
yeah,
and their mentality during fight camps is just spar every day, and then that's what you do.
mm-hmm,
Honestly, look like a little bit of a sparring session, but kind of sparring session, you're like 2 weeks away from your fight, and they're like, okay, let's not break our faces. Just do a little bit more body shots. Pull your
yeah.
punches a little bit. That's what it felt like. Um, there was
Did you
some.
just on that? Did you see Dominic Cruz's comments?
No, no, not yet. I was looking on Twitter after the fight. I don't. What did he say? I wasn't.
That's exactly what he said. He said it
Oh,
looks like a sparring match, and Chris Curtis took a bit of the hump with that. He wasn't too impressed at Dom's
oh,
comments and has kind of called him out on it. And Dom was terrible on comms, absolutely dreadful on this
yeah.
card.
I
But
saw. Yeah,
he was absolutely right on this bit
yeah,
because that's exactly what I thought. I thought the pair of them will almost refuse to engage. Barrio was talking about how he was going to take the fight to Chris Curtis in front of his home crowd. Chris Curtis was talking about how Barrio was just a less skilled version of himself, which was kind of what I sort of suggested in the preview
yeah.
because they
Makes sense.
got a similar kind of style, but I think Curtis has got much better hands. But I wasn't impressed with either of them, mate. I thought Barrio had more to give and didn't give and will probably kick himself. Curtis looked like he was doing the bare minimum to get the victory. The fact it was a split decision, I wouldn't have hated this being a draw, mate, if I'm honest. It didn't feel like either of them deserved to win.
That was my sentence in the crowd. I thought it was when Bruce Buffer started reading the scorecards. I was like, I shouldn't put money on a draw, because it felt like I couldn't tell who won, to be honest. I did feel like Curtis had a few more shots, especially hit his hooks to the body. Um, and landed probably some better jabs. I guess Extreme Couture likes those jabs, so they landed better. Um, yeah, it like we said, it's disappointing. Barrio has a chance to get into the rankings finally. I don't know if he was ever in the rankings, and he feels like he's been fighting UFC Apex cards forever, so could have been a bigger chance for him. Yeah, disappointing. I think me and Dom Cruz are on point. That it did feel like
Well,
a
that's
sparring
exactly
match.
what I thought as well. When I was watching it before Dom said it, I thought it looks like they're not trying these two. Looks like they don't want to hurt each other like the best mates in there. I mean, there was I don't know if you remember the PFL with their draw. They got two best, like one of them was the best man at the other guy's wedding, and they got drawn against each other in the tournament style,
Yeah, I heard something about it. Yeah,
and they kind of
and
grappled a lot more than striking because
striking.
they didn't want to hurt each other, and the PFL pulled them out, and that's why. Oh God, who was it? I
There's
forget the
Ronnie
guy.
Taylor.
Yeah, I forget just when I need him. Yeah. But anyway, just a little bit disappointing in that one. We'll move on to the main card opener.
Yeah.
Took a couple of things before jumping. Number one, I'm probably going to upset quite a lot of people with this, and it's probably a good thing that I can't use bad language. Number two, Dana White is going to cop for the first bit because Dana White said that he thought this was one of the worst fights that people have seen.
Well, I don't know if he did. He watch Rose Namajunas versus Esparza too?
Never mind Rose now. This is my problem with it. There's worst fights on this card. The
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
the
yeah.
Sean Strickland and Dricuss one, okay, it was more of a stand-up one, but from a technical side, it probably wasn't as good. Raquel Pennington, Mayra Bueno Silva the co-main was dreadful. Malott and Magny, okay, it had the finish in there, but it wasn't a crazy back and forth or anything like that. Chris Curtis, we've just talked about how that was a sparring match. This was probably the second or even maybe the best fight on the main card from a skill standpoint, at least. So I find it crazy that Dana said that. It just shows him to be a bit of a casual in my eyes. And I've always said that anyway. Dana talks rubbish constantly. So before I go in and give my take on this, I'm obviously British, so you would expect I'll have some kind of bias one way or another. But for you in the crowd, thoughts on Arnold Allen and Movsar of Evloev?
So I like Allen. I did poke fun of you when you had him as your champion in the year, and like I said, Max Holloway beat him easily. And Allen also trains out of Montreal too. So for us Sahabis in this corner, so fights out of Canada. So I really wanted Allen to win here. I want to see him on a 2-fight losing streak. And I think Allen did everything he could to get the victory. I think especially in the third round, he knew he was down 0-2. I don't know. I didn't hear the coaches, what they said to him. But I feel like he came out swinging. And especially that nice ninja choke he had, I really thought he had that. And then it was super close. We're all rooting for Allen in the crowd. Allen did his best with what they gave him. I would say that because Mursar Evloev, he is not a striker. He's more of a grappler. He takes you down and holds you down and doesn't even do much damage. If you looked at his previous fights, it worked. It works for Mursar because now he's 18-0, unbeaten, undefeated. So, it was disappointing towards like Mursar. Again, disappointing is a recurring theme of this. Mursar didn't do more. Like he could have fight for position, get the chokes in, try to ground and pound. Throw in some few elbows, get some blood going. It was mostly Mursar played his fight to the T, and Allen was chasing him the whole time and had to defend. And then every little opportunity Allen got, he tried to finish the fight his way by submission or by coming out strong in the third round.
So there's two things I want your opinion on. Number one is going to be the knees.
Yes. Okay.
Number two is going to be the actual score and the result. Any issues with the result from your end?
No, it's pretty close. I have to like rewatch it for sure. From where I was sitting, it looked like 2 rounds to three for Mostar. Like round 1 and 2 were look for Mostar, and round 3 Allen came out strong and he stole that round. So, how did you score it?
Well, the knees, firstly. I think there needs to be a little bit of an alteration to the criteria because I actually think Mark Goddard got this absolutely right. I think the knees were illegal by the rule book because the hand was down, and the only time the hand came back up was when Arnold Allen kneed Evloev in the head. So, and that was just the force of the body coming up. What I don't like about the rule is that Evloev did it intentionally. You know,
Because he
there
was
was
standing
no
straight. Yeah.
weight on that hand whatsoever. You know, he wasn't relying on that hand as being grounded as such. Yes, it was touching the mat. Yes, it was touching the canvas, but he was putting no weight on it whatsoever. He was touching it down with the intention of I don't want to be kneed. He knew that's what Arnold was going to do, so he put the hand down, and that needs eradicating from the game, I think, because that's like it's almost a sneaky tactic. It's completely legal, and he's absolutely right to do it as the fighter. But I just feel like the rules should be if the hand is down and it's weight bearing, then fine. That's that if you that's kneeing a downed opponent. If you're kneeing somebody as he kind of moving back in a bit of a scramble or whatever, that's not a downed opponent. You know, Petr Yan on Aljamain Sterling, that's kneeing a downed
That's a down.
opponent.
Yeah.
What Arnold Allen did was, in essence, striking. It was no different than striking as you're pushing somebody back up against the cage. You know, it needs a little bit more clarity on it, I think, just to stop situations like this because I don't really think there was anything wrong with what Arnold Allen did, but I also accept the fact that the knees were illegal. Thought Mark Goddard handled it perfectly. Gave Evloev the time, didn't take any points off, anything like that. Just gave a very, very harsh warning to Arnold saying, don't do it again. I know you didn't do it on purpose. Insofar as you were trying to knee a downed opponent, you were just trying to get the job done. But as for the fight itself, I was a bit annoyed that this wasn't further up the card. I understood the Canadian aspect of it and wanting those guys further up, but I felt from a skill level, rankings level, this deserved to be a little bit higher up. I thought the quality of the matchup was phenomenal. I've seen a lot of people say that it was not the best fight or not the most exciting or whatever else. I actually really enjoyed it because I thought the skill level of these guys was through the roof. I thought I'll get to the basis of it because I've seen there's an awful lot of people. Lewis Glover, who was on the preview as well, Lewis turned around, he said that Arnold Allen won this fight. There's a lot of others have said the same. I don't agree. I don't agree. Take off the brick glasses for a minute, right? I don't. I was watching the fight, and my instinct in the moment was that Arnold had lost the fight. I had it 2-1 to Evloev. I
Same as
thought
me.
that.
First 2 rounds for 11, third round for yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily score it. I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit here because I didn't score it round for round. I was just kind of watching it in the moment. But as it finished, I thought to myself, I think Evloev's won that. Because probably because I felt he was 2 up already and Arnold was chasing it. But also, I think if you take, like, Arnold came on strong in that third round, but there's an element, and you hear the Fight Disciples, for example, they talk about it constantly. Are you scoring somebody around because they've done better than they've done in the previous rounds? Doesn't necessarily mean they've won a round. It means that they've just done better than what you've seen them do before. So if you felt Arnold Allen lost the first and lost the second, but then he comes out and makes a fist of it in the third, you might be inclined to give him that round. And it's a tricky one. Like the knees, they bust open the head of Evloev. There's blood everywhere. The eye test says that although he's won the fight and he's kneed him, he's done whatever, he's caused some damage, he's done, but the damage was illegal. The referee stopped it, so you don't score the knees. Do you know what I mean? You've kind of got to eradicate that, but he absolutely was the aggressor. I could argue that I had it 1 and 2 for Evloev, just thinking back on it now, and I had Arnold Allen with the third. But the first round was close. The reason that I think a lot of people are getting wound up by this is that it's coming back to the same conversation we had earlier on, with regards to takedowns.
Yeah.
Evloev was shooting, and Arnold Allen was defending exceptionally well, better than I think a lot of people thought he would. When he was taken down, he got straight back up, but the round itself was very close because of that, because there was the control time and the time that Evloev spent kind of resting on Arnold Allen was winning him that round.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty, it wasn't doing much, but he was dictating where the fight took place. And you're right, basically all it was, Arnold was defending superb, but as much as you don't get points necessarily for takedowns and doing nothing with it, you don't get points for defense either. So just because he did an incredible job at keeping Evloev off him, I have a hard time scoring it for Arnold. I do. And I hate to say that because I love the kid. I think he's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal talent and he's an incredible guy. And I actually think, as far as well-rounded fighters go, he's right up there. But there was a moment, it might have been the second round, where Evloev clipped him as well, and he hurt him, he wobbled him, and whether you guys picked up on that in the arena or not, but on the TV we could see it. You know, he hurt Arnold Allen, Evloev at one point, and it was looking not too good. But he recovered well, and
Right. Yeah.
you know there was the ninja choke, like you said, and he made a real fist of it. But you don't score that. You know, because he tried and he did a lot of things exceptionally well, it's not enough. For me, Evloev won the fight. I would have been surprised had they given it Arnold Allen. I've got no complaints with it. For Arnold Allen, it's back to the drawing board. I think, do you know what? I think he beats everybody in the top 15 apart from somebody with that style, because it's just difficult for him because we're not wrestlers from over here. You know,
Well,
wrestling's
nobody.
not our game. Likewise, I think there's fighters in there that beat Evloev because his style is just so tricky. It's so hard. It's not the most attractive. It's very Ankalaev-esque.
But
It's just,
nobody figured it out yet. That's why he's 18-0.
yeah, it just works. Someone will clip him. At some point, somebody will clip him. And it'd be something silly like a stylistic matchup that you would think would be perfect for him, like a Josh Emmett or somebody like
Bryce
that.
Mitchell, maybe, just because
Yeah.
the ground aspect.
Well,
I
I mean,
don't know
like,
who you would give.
you would think that like Josh Emmett would get dominated by Evloev on points and just ground out and basically wrestled all over the place. But Josh Emmett could put Evloev's lights out. You see it. It's something like that will happen to him at some point because he doesn't close the show.
True.
And but he was talking about a title shot, John, and it's difficult because you can't really justify it to a certain extent. But also, he's number 9. He's just beaten Arnold Allen.
Who's done top 5?
Max goes up against Gaethje and gets beat. If Yair Rodriguez beats Brian Ortega, Yair's probably within more of a shout. But what happens if Topuria beats Volk? Then we're looking at a rematch there. So do you then make Yair Rodriguez and Evloev? It's like that one there. I think Yair Rodriguez is a bit of a nightmare for Evloev because Yair is just dangerous everywhere. You know, he can end a fight regardless of where it is. But it's again, you know, you look at Max. Max has been there, beat everyone, but if Volk wins, he ain't getting Volk. If Ilya wins, Volk's probably going to get the rematch. So I think there's another one in there for Evloev, and it needs to be one of the top guys. I am the way I see this playing out. I think Brian Ortega gets beaten by Yair Rodriguez, and I think we end up with Rodriguez Evloev.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. So the rankings came out today, and Evloev is in the top 5 now.
Yeah, well, Arnold Allen was 4, wasn't he? So
Arnold Allen went from I believe 5 to 7 to 6. So he swapped his places. So to piggyback off your thoughts, yeah, he does need definitely one more fight. Like I keep saying in the past podcast, defend your ranking. You just got in the top 5, so you need a top 5 ranking fight. Yeah. So Holloway moved up. Yair is fighting Ortega, and I think Ortega, if he loses, I think that'll be a good matchup for Evloev. He's fighting like 2 months, I believe, in Mexico City. So timeline could match up.
Yeah.
If not, you definitely got to fight somebody outside of the top 5, just to prove you belong in the top 5 division,
Yeah,
and
I
then you
get
really just
that.
gotta sit out and wait for what happens. Volk to Poria, who wins and whatnot.
Yeah, I get that. I think probably because we're different sides of the pond, we maybe look at it a little bit differently. I get your take, and I think maybe in a different scenario, I'd probably be saying the same thing. It's only because of how familiar I am with Arnold Allen and how good he is. He doesn't make a lot of noise, doesn't make a lot of racket, but he is a phenomenal fighter. So to me, he's already proven that he's top 5. You know, that's my opinion. I think Evlo has proven he's top 5 by beating Arnold Allen, but I do think he needs one more, and I do think
Yeah.
that will be the winner of Ortega. Well,
Loser. I would say it's loser.
potentially, yeah, but we'll see.
I just think since you just gone top 5, you're okay. You fought 15-10. You fought 5-10.
Mhm.
Now you need to fight between 1 and 5.
Yeah, logically
And
makes sense.
yeah, so I think that's what they're bringing him on. So especially moving him up, was he ranked 7th before, and then moving up to 5? That's a big jump. You're in the top 5. You
Well, he
cracked
was
it.
9.
Oh,
Right.
there you go. Even bigger jump. You were 9th, and now you're in the top 5. So now you gotta.
Mhm.
I know you understand your point. Like, you prove you beat Allen, so you are a top 5 fighter. But I think you gotta prove it on one more,
Yeah.
because you're not getting a title shot off of this performance.
Yeah, I think the difference with this division is just purely how it's played out because Volk has been so dominant. You know, you're not itching to see Volk and Max again. He's just beaten Yair, so if Yair beats Ortega, do you want to see that again? Assuming Volk's successful. If Poirier wins, it's a completely different story because there's so many
Yeah.
matchups there to make. You know, like you said, there's 4, 5, 6 names ahead of Evloev potentially. But if Volk gets the job done against Ilya, then we're looking at who's next. He's beat Max. He's beat Ortega. He's beat Yair. Emmett's obviously lost to Yair in the interim
match.
fight.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're looking down. Arnold Allen's lost now to Evloev and to Max. So, it's what do you do? But he definitely needs one more. Definitely. It'd be interesting to see what they do with him as well. Because, you know, you talk about those guys, Max is in the same position. Win, lose, or draw against Gaethje. Max comes back down and Volk's the champ.
I
Who
think
does Max fight next? Because
yeah,
he's beat Yair. He's beat Ortega. You know, there's the Emmett
he's beat
fight
Allen too.
probably.
Yeah.
But Cater and all those guys, Max has gone through them. So, I mean, for the rest of this card, mate, any comments on the Brad Katona fight?
Who'd you have?
I haven't watched it, mate.
You
I'll
haven't
be
watched him?
completely honest, right? I
Okay.
woke up, I decided I looked at this card and I almost decided I wasn't getting up for it at all. For a pay-per-view and it be starting at midnight and that sorry, what time did it start UK? Started
8 p.m.
at 11:30
2 a.m.
p.m.
Yeah.
and went through till 6:30 a.m. in the morning. So I wasn't going to stop up and watch this card. I wasn't impressed with the card as a pay-per-view. We talked about it in the preview card. You know, Dana's talking about they're going to come back to Canada, and I think they need to because this was a shocking card. Nearly said something else. But yeah,
Okay.
you know, it was. I mean, so I haven't gone back and watched the rest because you mentioned it earlier on. I was so disappointed, John, in the fights that I did watch, and they were the ones that had something in them. So you've got the Katona and Armfield fight. I mean, you got the mix up at the end. I wanted to ask you about this one with Charles Jourdain and Sean Woodson.
Yeah, it
Were
was
you,
really
were you
loud.
cheering?
I was cheering. I heard it honestly at the arena. It sounded like he was saying Charles or like Charles, Sean, kind of close.
Yeah.
So he's start saying Charles, and everybody start celebrating. But you also heard Bruce Buffer kept saying the sniper Woodson, and I was confused. I'm like, I guess
Yeah.
he did win. But yeah, I think there was there was a little bit of like a speaker problem, I guess, at the arena because Bruce sounded like a little bit bad at the beginning, but it's because of the speakers. It sounded like it was too
Okay.
much coming out,
Right.
and I guess it just I don't know. I did think Charles won
Okay.
based on what Bruce said,
Right.
and then but I wasn't mad with when Sean won. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna skip it. I mean, we've got about 4 minutes left, mate, before we have to shoot. So, as for these, is there any? I haven't watched them. I'm looking at the performance of the night. She got Gillian Robertson. Nice to see her get the job done. Fancied that one and should have probably gone with it. It was nice from a British point of view to see Sam Patterson get a victory
Yep.
because he started in a horrible way in his UFC debut. So nice to see him get that one back. Jasmine Jazadavicius
Oh yeah.
picked up a performance of the night as well. Again, another one I should have probably gone with, but didn't do it. So, for you, you can wrap us up, John. So you
Yeah.
can pick something or mention anything that you want to talk about because like I said, I haven't watched it, and then you can kind of say as the whole card as a whole.
Yeah, I'll just go through the prelims real quickly. So the early prelims, the first 3 fights, 3 finishes, off to a bang. Jimmy Flick, I think, yeah, he was getting dominated on the feet, and then Gordon missed weight. Looks like he gassed out. He announced his retirement after, so it wasn't big. And I also met Jimmy Flick, so he's a really, really good guy and good finishes. Jasmine, pure domination. I think one judge had it at 10-7 in the third round. She looked pissed in that fight. Sam Patterson, I was really impressed by him. I was taking videos to show you guys, since the Brit.
Yeah.
He impressed me too. Quick night for him. I surprised he didn't get the bonus either. But I guess Dana was feeling a bit cheap that night.
Well, you can tell that from the card.
Exactly. Gillian Robertson, again, yeah, she keeps going. I think she has a record in submissions in the strawweight division. So good for her. Polian Viana had some hype in her first few fights and then just dropped down. So it disappointed on her end, but Gillian did what she had to do. Yeah. So, but she dominated round one and round two, and then she eventually got DKO. And she mentioned it in her post fight. Her last DKO was in Edmonton.
Okay.
10 years ago. Actually not 10 years ago, but I don't know when that was. And now it's Toronto. For me, this was fight of the night, City versus Taveras. And I completely disagree with the decision.
Yeah, I saw quite a lot did.
I think live, and I didn't see it on broadcast, but live, City had at least 2 rounds for me. I think he put up the more pressure, the more damage, the more strikes. Taveras felt like he was chasing City. He did come out strong in the third. Also, Taveras missed weight, so that could have impacted. But yeah, for me, that was personally my fight of the night. City, and I don't agree with the decision. I think City should have got the win, and they should have closed that story coming up.
You said you thought Jourdain got the job done against Woodson as well. And then finally, last one on there, mate, is Katona and Armfield.
Solid fight. It was a pretty good fight. I think it was a banger. Sorry, not a banger. It was just back and forth. It was good. It was like I'm sorry, a few Bud Lights that day, so I can't quite remember it off top of my mind, but I remember I was just going. I was sitting atop the edge of my seat and going, oh, every second. So if I remember correctly, there's some good strikes landed. Bantamweights, so it's always fun times of bantamweights.
Yeah, it's as the card in general. I mean, you were there in the arena, and it's always a lot more fun when that's the case. The crowd's popping. You cheer, all the cheering, regardless of how the results end up. It plays a major impact. For me, this was a real disappointing pay-per-view card. Didn't like it on paper. Didn't like what I saw on the main card. Obviously, there is some stuff in the prelims that's good to look at. Obviously, I saw loads of stuff on social saying how good that was. But we've got 298, 299, and 300 to come. So on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us. It's Combat Sports UK and the MMA pod. See you next time.